Night Live brought to you by CrowCast. We're back after a week off, and we were kind of hoping that stuff would happen during that week to give us something to talk about, and nothing did. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be... No. We may as well press on, hey? Joining me tonight is Peter, as usual. How you going, Pete?
Good, mate. Don't throw to me for the news, because there is none.
No, there's one. There's one thing that did happen.
God. Macca, how you doing, buddy?
Well, not as good as you, mate. You backed the winner of the cup, and I just missed out.
Winners are grinners.
Well done, mate. Well done.
And the representative from Peter, Nikki. How you going, Pete? Nick.
I know I'm tired after the weekend at Supernova, but really, come on.
Well, you know. Very good. Well, what the hell? Let's play the news intro music anyway, and then we'll see what happens from there, shall we? Well, You're so impatient.
Wow, that was really...
Sorry, it cut out.
Oh, did it?
No, it actually cut out. So I thought, yeah, the music cut out. I thought, okay,
He
have to go.
does so, Nicky, but I don't know whether the others hear it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well,
No, the only bit of news that I know of for our club was that Lockie Murphy is now on the senior list. That happened.
That happened? It
That
did
was about
happen.
it. Yep.
And
That
that creates an interesting question, though, the Lockie Murphy promotion, because we've got 6 draft picks, and we had 6 vacancies after we signed Riley Knight. And now we've promoted Lockie Murphy onto the main list. That really means that's presuming that we run at our a list of 38 on the senior list and 6 on the rookie list. And does that mean we're going to increase our number on the senior list to 39? I doubt it, because that's putting more money onto the senior list. Are we going to trade 2 of our picks for 1 and only take 5? So
all these
there's a lot of interesting questions around there.
All these questions and more will be answered, Macca, in our only segment of the evening. What the hell are we going to do with our list?
I could chime in, and I'll just quickly say good day to DSG, who said good day on the chat. How are you, mate? And J-Mac, good to see you on board. The only probably main news that came out since the last potty was the fixture. So the fixture, don't let anybody call it a draw, because it's not a draw. It's a fixture. It's a corporate entertainment business. It is not a sporting organisation. And the fixture came out last week. And there seemed to be, interestingly enough, most of the feel that I got was that a lot of people weren't particularly happy with our fixture, just in terms of the degree of difficulty. Probably no cause for complaint, given the fact that it wasn't commercially very good, given that we've had 2 fairly poor years. So hard to put your hand out for too much in that regard. But interestingly enough, if you looked at Champion Data and a couple of places like that, they had us, in the top 4 or 5 easiest draws, if you want to top or bottom, whichever one you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And thought that our fixture was actually pretty good.
Yeah, a tough-ish start according to the stats, but a pretty easy run, or middle run and then run home.
Except
by comparison.
for the last game.
Well, yeah, but like you're dead set right, Pete. We've underperformed for the last couple of years since 2017, so I guess we have to take what we're given. Although we still are the biggest ticket in town in Adelaide.
Yeah, we've got 1 Thursday night and 2 Friday nights. So that's 3, and I suppose that's all we can expect to get, given our performance the last 2 years. Although Carlton, when they were bottom, we're getting 7 and 8, so there does seem to be a little bit of an equity there.
And on that point, Macca, hilariously, they've actually started to play better and they're more watchable. They're no longer on Friday night.
What a joke. Yeah, exactly. I think they'll probably be reasonably good this year. They may well finish above us, I think. At least they're going to finish around the same mark, I would think. One thing I didn't like about the draw was the fact, though, that we play, of last year's 6 top teams, we play 5 of them away. And And I think that does put a degree of difficulty in it, which isn't transparent in the sense that if you played those 5 games at home, you might be some chance of picking up 2 or 3 of those. Whereas you on the road, you're almost certainly going to lose them. And if you play the lesser teams at home or away, you're still a good chance of winning either way. So I think there is a little degree of difficulty in that particular sense, anyhow.
Certainly, there will be nothing that will rattle the CEO's cage like a fixture like that commercially. So, obviously, things have been done, things have been put into place to try and turn the football department around. But this is where it really bites the commercial arm, and so hopefully, the fact that they've received a bite and that it's made their job a little bit more difficult. Hopefully, we'll continue to see Andrew Fagan pushing for a better football department to turn that around.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? I mean, because we've got 8 lunchtime games, we've got 7 twilight games, and we've got 7 evening games, and in total 7. So previously, I think we've had probably like about 12 or 13 evening games, if not more. So we've gone really from being in prime time to lunchtime and twilight. And again, that's reflecting our performance for the last 2 years, and also the fact, I think even more so, the fact that they know that we'll still get a crowd no matter what time they put it on.
I think one of the biggest things to come out of the fixture is the scheduling of Carlton in Adelaide for the first time in
10 years.
A long time. Obviously, the Eddie Betts Cup, and just more evidence, Peter, that it is a commercial venture and not a fair fixture, because that's the only reason Carlton are playing in Adelaide this year.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. And the AFL's cup runneth over by the fact that both Collingwood and Richmond are now have been and will likely continue to be in the top 4, or at least top 6 of teams, and so they can legitimately hand over all of the prime slots to those 2 teams and let them run amok in the MCG with all the crowds that they pull and have nice runs into the finals and all of that good stuff. So with those 2 clubs in good nick at the moment, it's going to be they're going to be very, very hard to move in terms of winning a flag. I mean,
yeah,
for any other club.
I mean, I think my own personal view about our draw is that it's not a bad start for the new regime. A few games at home. I think it was 4 the first 5, I think, something like that, or whatever.
Yeah, we got a good start in terms of that. Yep.
I mean, we got some decent opponents, but at least we're spending a bit home. He can bet himself in, etc., etc. To be honest with you, I think next year for the Adelaide Crows is much about how we play, not where we play or anything like that. I think it's very much reset time, and if there was any year that you probably didn't care too much about the draw, apart from, as you mentioned, Pete, from a commercial perspective, it's probably next year.
Well, next year is really more about what players we're going to play and what game style we're going to play, and developing that and putting miles into the legs of these young lads at AFL level. I'm going to say, and there won't be thousands of them, but there's going to be like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them maybe get games, which is quite novel for us anyhow. And it depends. It depends who we take at the draft as well. Whether you would think that if we stick with pick 4, our first round pick, you'd hope that person would be playing at AFL level immediately. So that's another one.
And it does actually help that the start of our run is we've got quite a lot of games at home, because what we saw with Gold Coast, they started off quite well, and then all of that travel got to the younger players, and that's when they tired and they just couldn't run out games, because the travel actually takes a lot out of you, not just playing an AFL game, which is a massive step up from wherever they've come, whether they've been playing in the SNFL or in the under-18s. So I think that little run at the start helps us if we're blooding younger players there. They're actually in a stable environment. They're not having to travel so much.
Yeah, at least to start off with. Anyway, any other comments about the draft, about the draw fixture?
No, I was a bit annoyed with, we've got to go down to Tasmania to play Hawthorn. That's annoying. And then, Alice Springs to play Melbourne. And, these we just get stuck. We get stuck with these.
Yeah, we've got 5 remote places I think we go to.
Yeah, that's right. And we've 2 games on the MCG, which is, pathetic. We play Melbourne, they get their home game in Alice Springs. I mean, that kind of stuff's ridiculous. But, that's, I go back to my opening point. It is not, the AFL are not a sporting organisation. They sit somewhere just a little bit slightly below the WWF or WWE.
You rate them highly, Pete.
They just manufacture a whole lot of things to generate as much revenue as they can, and there is no, and never has been, and probably never will be, any equity in any kind of fixture that they put out. So that's my view on it.
I think it's getting worse though, isn't it? To me, I think it's heading more biased towards the VFL or Victorian clubs more and more, and witness the fact the MCG being locked up for 300 years, so nobody can even threaten to get a grand final in their own state. So I just think that this regime of the AFL, as opposed to even Demetrio, is very Vic-centric, in my opinion, anyhow.
I think that comes down to the weakness of McLaughlin, to be honest.
Sorry, the weakness of what?
McLaughlin, I think he just caves to everyone.
Oh, he does. He's weak.
Yeah.
Oh, weak as.
Yeah, quite weak. I guess the only other thing is the showdown fixture on the what is it, the second one where we
second game.
They have the Sunday to ourselves. Is that the one I'm talking about? I think it is.
Yeah, obviously Port get their flash Saturday night showdown, and we get Sunday 4 o'clock or some pathetic time like that. Which Andrew Fagan had a little squeaky voice in the background, was complaining about it, but that will just be swept under the carpet.
He's your pin-up boy, isn't he, Pete?
Oh, I'm not particularly thrilled with any of them, Macca, but it is what it is, and let's hope that onward and upward next year. Although there was no news of any appointments. There's been plenty of rumours. There was a rumour going around that for the football ops manager job, that there was the I don't know the chap's name, but he's the current SNFL operations manager. I think it was in fairly deep.
Oh yes, I did hear that. Yeah.
Do you know his name? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think he's well that well known, Pete. Honestly,
very impressive background, though.
He has got a good CV, but
I'm talking about Jake Parkinson.
No,
it's not him. I'd never heard his name before, though.
No, I'd never heard of him before.
But when they went through what he's done, he came up very well in terms of what he's done. And so, I don't. In terms of those vacancies. It's interesting though, because I was just looking up, for example, at what news there is around that we could talk about. Sydney have actually regenerated all their assistant coaches, so it's not too late in the season to be doing that. But we've heard nothing at all, and that's one thing. I thought that's one of the things that Nixon would do straight away is assess what he's got or look at what he's got and maybe refresh it.
I thought it was very interesting because there was a press release put out by Andrew Fagan, just in relation to the senior assistant coach position. And it did sound to me like there'd been a little bit of a cooling on that, just reading between the lines.
Yep.
It was very much, suddenly it was back in Nix's sort of court, and whether he really wanted one or not. I just get a sense that maybe there wasn't, or there isn't anybody around that he particularly wants or that he could get hold of. And that maybe they'll just roll for 12 months and
Well, that's a conclusion I've come to, Pete. Exactly what you just said.
Whoever it is that he wants, that maybe he can't get, maybe he can get him, this time next year.
Yeah,
I think that's what's happening.
Which again is an indictment on the timing of the whole review. There's no planning; it was knee jerk, etc., etc. And here we are. We're going to have a very, very weak coaching box if that turns out to be the case, Peter. We're nearly at Christmas time without a CEO. Without a footy ops manager. No word on the cultural manager. I mean, these are appointments that should have been made by now.
Well, the most important one is the football manager, but Fagan says, well, everything's sort of lined up until Christmas time, so that's okay. But I think, I suppose we just can't, again, because of what you just said, Fiend, it's all the wrong time, so therefore we can't get the right people. And that's where we're struggling a bit there. And the other job, the culture of leadership job, that's been said, and quite rightly so, that the football director, in conjunction with the coach, will discuss it, and they'll both be involved in the appointment of that position.
Yeah, I really sense a loss of momentum.
Yes,
they were rolling, with the results of the review and the announcement of the positions and all of that sort of stuff, and there seemed to be some good momentum into the pre-season, but they've just really stalled, and 3 key appointments are just hanging in the wind at the moment.
Well, the interesting thing though that the chairman said, and that was about a week before Nix was announced, that in the next 2 weeks there would be a series of announcements. And there's only been the one. So I think you're absolutely right that things have backfired somewhere along the line, and something's hasn't gone according to plan, or they can't get what they want. But to make that statement, it almost sounded like they had people lined up. And I remember them saying that when they were interviewing people for the coaching position, that they also had unearthed many quality candidates for the coaching the manager of football position as well. So I don't know what happened to all those.
Fane, you're absolutely spot on that the coaching box now it looks incredibly inexperienced.
Yep.
It's lost an experienced coach in Don Park, replaced with a first-time coach. It's for all the criticisms that you want to level at Camporelli. He was a 10-year senior assistant coach. He's gone. So you're left with 3 second-year assistants, and a first-year coach. So it would be the most inexperienced coaching box in the AFL.
There's a longer-term assistant in there, but I don't think anybody has any faith in him.
You're talking about Hart?
Yeah.
Well, yes, he's a very experienced one, because he's been sacked by Collingwood, and then we've had him for 2 years. We really wanted to sack him after the first year. So I don't know why he hasn't been moved on and somebody put in there. But again, I think it could come back to what Pete said, and I think combine what Pete said with what Fiend said, timing's wrong, can't get what you want, can't get the right people that we need. So it could well be a rough year this year, and we'll get the right people next year.
Yeah.
But it's not a good start, though, for Nix, though, is it?
Well, it's horrific. Yeah, why would you put someone in that position? You wouldn't do it in corporate world. You wouldn't throw someone into a position of such importance without giving him strong support. It's almost lambs to the slaughter, really. It just, again, it smacks of a football club that has been so focused on the commercial and the non-football stuff that they've, paid no attention whatsoever to any sort of planning with regards to the football operations. You don't. I mean, we sacked two people, key people, and yes, it was as a result of a review. But how often do you sack people without incumbents in place? Replacements, I should say, in place, or at least having spoken to people. How often do you do that?
well, having been hired many people at top level, if you're going to put somebody off, you've got either irons in the fire, or you know that there's going to be people applying that you want. So you're quite right. If they've done it and just done it hoping that something's going to happen, well, that's pretty stupid. And the way they've acted is possible, sadly.
And, let's be honest here. When Chapman had a story to tell about how, we're doing a review and we're being proactive and blah, 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 you couldn't get him off the bloody screens and off the radio dials. And then he sends Fagan out to basically say, oh, well, we're not sure what's going to happen at the moment. It's like, Chappie's gone on holidays. Like,
he's in a dugout. Hiding in a dugout.
It is so transparent.
Fagan's then kind of gone, well, what are you asking me for?
Yeah, exactly.
His appointments. It's like, what's going on?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's just like it's happened for so many years now with the Adelaide Footy Club that people who follow the club closely and follow how it works and probably, aren't as devoted to green lighting everything that the club does. It's become a farce. It's a parody now, the way the club handles itself, and it's just another chapter in that book this year.
Well, you think that one of the things that did come out of the review, and that was put out openly by the club, that it needs to open itself up more to its members and to communicate more. And pardon my language, we've heard fuck all for weeks now. I mean, we've got no progress report. You would think that that they would at least say something like, we've got some very promising candidates we're in the process of interviewing, or maybe the truth of we've got bloody nobody.
Well, I think that maybe they are being truthful, Mac. Maybe they have got bugger all, and so they're saying bugger all because they've got nothing to announce.
Well, I mean, at the moment, the communication is low in terms of what's happening. We've got no ideas what's happening with assistant coaches. Got no idea. We do. The one thing we know is that the person who's going to be appointed to eventually, and without hurry, because there was no hurry, because Fagan said that. That's one thing we do know. The leadership and culture position, so we must be really great in that particular area, because there's no hurry there. And that's going to be appointed once the football manager's been appointed. But I would have thought just a progress report that they're interviewing people and that they hope to make an appointment 2 or 3 weeks' time. Just at the moment, it's just a void. And Adelaide people are sick and tired, I think, of just being treated like bloody idiots. I just thought that would not hurt just to come out even with even almost nothing statements, but just something that make us feel like there was something happening.
Macca, it took almost World War III to mobilise the masses of Adelaide Football Club supporters. No disrespect to anybody, but there's a small portion of agitators, and then there's a larger portion of supporters, I guess, who are not ambivalent but are willing to give the club the benefit of the doubt. And it took World War III to get that group going. And I think that group have been satisfied that change has occurred. And if you talk to them, they'll say, well, what else do you want? They've done the review, people have walked, people got sacked, blah, blah, blah. So that's all good. So the club has addressed the large percentage of its supporter base and appeased the large percentage of its supporter base, because the large percentage of the supporter base feel that what needed to be done has been done. People have been removed, albeit that the club and those supporters had to be convinced that those people needed to be removed. And they would just say to you, Macca, that these things will happen in due course. So there's no more urgency around this.
I think, can I just chip in?
Yes.
I think, Macca, the guy we were talking about, his name is Thomas Hurley.
No, it's Adam Kelly.
Adam Kelly.
No, that's right. Nicky has got it. It is Adam Kelly.
Okay, sorry. I must have looked at a different position.
Yeah, he's above Thomas
General
Hurley.
Manager of football. So, yeah, sorry, you're right. So he's a general manager of football.
There's something wrong with your
for the
mic tonight,
SNFL.
Peter.
Is that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
you sound like you're coming from
maybe-
live
could be
from
my voice,
Afghanistan.
I've had some health issues as well with my chest and throat, so that might not help.
No,
Anyway,
I think
he's
it's
the
your
general manager of football at the SNFL, Adam Kelly. I think he's in it up to his neck.
Yeah, I think because of the absence of anybody else, I think that because when I say absence of anybody else, that's not quite true. We have had a crack at, and we have been told we've had a crack at the big boys. And I mean, Rowie was saying that Craig could all but announce it's going to be Craig Gozzo. Well, and all the papers are saying exactly the opposite to that. So
I'll quickly run you through. He's a member of the Australian Society of Practicing Accountants. He has a Bachelor of Business from La Trobe University. He has an MBA in Sports Management from Deakin University. He has something or other in Leadership Development from the University of Melbourne Business School. He's got a degree from Harvard Business School in Strategic Negotiations. He was formerly the CEO of Murray Valley Racing. He was the CEO of East Fremantle Football Club. He's now the General Manager of football for the SNFL. I remember, Macca, that I looked and I thought he, to me, was a very, very impressive chap. And just looking through that CV, looks to me like he would be a bloody good get.
But hang on, he hasn't failed at leading 2 clubs down the gurgler in terms of injuries. How can he be qualified?
And he's actually been the CEO, the general manager of football at the SNFL for the past 5 years, and we've actually seen that improve. So I think there's some very nice little. You're spot on there, Pete. There's a very nice CV, and the Harvard one was the same one that Noble did. It's that strategic. Is it strategic negotiations?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, he's got a very good CV. There's no doubt about that. And if he lives up personally to that, well, you think he'd be a reasonably good get.
Well, they need to make an appointment soon, and for the club to say there's no real hurry is absolutely ridiculous, because how can you expect Matthew Nicks to walk in essentially without a boss, because that role will be his direct report? So Nixie walks in without a boss. He's got to come up with his own pre-season plan. He's got to come up with his own, venues and all that sort of stuff. He's got to organise a mind training camp. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's been put on Matthew Nicks's shoulders that would otherwise have been handled by the GM footy ops. And all jokes aside, that position needs to be filled urgently, in my opinion, not at our leisure.
Well,
I do wonder a little bit, though, Fiend, is whether they have actually selected somebody, but they're going to be coming from a position elsewhere. So they have to give notice at that other position, and whether what you're doing is actually being respectful to where you're poaching that person from, let them finish out that job before you actually announce it, which is the right thing to do.
No, it's not. The last time I left a job, I announced my resignation, gave 4 weeks' notice, and my employer started looking for another thing, and I was allowed to tell everyone. I mean, that's not respectful at all. That's actual bollocks. Like once the selection's been made, you announce it. You don't have to respect any other organisation because they're going to be on the prowl looking for a replacement. So, sorry, without being disrespectful, Nikki, I disagree with what you're saying.
That's actually different in the area that I work in, because we often appoint people and they have a start date, but we are not allowed to announce their name until a later time. So that does happen in different industries.
Maybe it does, but not in the corporate world, in my experience.
No, not in mine either.
I'll say this. I'll be very, very happy. I'd be a very, very happy camper if I hear in the next few weeks that Adam Kelly has been appointed to that position, because I reckon he sounds like the bomb. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think.
And DSG, you mentioned about whether the Hurley that I mentioned, who's the operations manager at SNFL, whether he might be a relation to the Hurley on the board of the Crows. when I saw that name, I thought exactly the same thing. I thought, oh, hang on, here we go. So I was happy that Nicky came over the top with
I thought
the guy's name is the next one up, Adam Kelly. So.
Doesn't Thomas Hurley actually run the bottle down at the Arca
Probably.
He runs a lot of them.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I wouldn't be too unhappy with that either, Peter. I just want it to be done because we need to give these kids as much support as we possibly can. Otherwise, we're just going to be a laughing stock next year.
Yeah, it's a missing cornerstone at the moment because if you've got that person and they get and the earlier the better, in my opinion, because they've got time to bed in with Nicks before the season starts, and those two have to get on very well together and work together because they're basically planning the whole footy season and things we're going to do, etc. So, in terms of leadership and cultural position, they did say some weeks back that they had some very good candidates for it, but they're holding back on that, of course, until this position's filled. So, yeah, it seems a little better for the footy manager's job.
Put it this way, the further it goes, sorry, Peter, the further it goes, the more of a pass I'm willing to give Nixie in his first year because he's just starting on the back foot. So
yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say, the only reason I can see Adam Kelly not getting the position is I reckon it might just scare having someone like that might just scare the clappers out of fags. I mean, he'd be looking over his shoulder, I reckon.
Well, you know, we always say about internal tension, Pete, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So, hadn't been enough of that. Now, what the hell else were we going to talk about? Oh,
well, I think our list. We've got the draft coming up, and what areas should we be targeting to strengthen our list to get the right people in the right spots?
Well, yeah.
When is the draft?
It's end of November.
27th, whatever, November.
27th.
That's
over
stupid.
2 nights.
Over 2 days again.
Well, I'm happy to kick this discussion off, no pun intended, with a little bit of stuff that came over Twitter through via the Adelaide Now site. And that was alluding to the fact that Adelaide had showed very, very considerable interest in the young Norwood lad, Dylan Stevens, and that he's very, very high in our calculations. And he's actually reported himself to the paper that Adelaide has shown significant interest, much more so, I think, than Port Adelaide. So he is rated in most of the mocks going around the place as to somewhere around, anywhere
11.
between sort of. Yeah, I was going to say anywhere between the ones that I've seen anywhere between 9 and 12, sort of in around that range. And I don't know if you've seen much of him, but I had a look at his highlights package, and like all those highlights packages, he looked fantastic. He played a lot of really good, strong league football for Norwood this year, and had a fairly quiet championships in the under 18s. So I think that kind of just pushed him out a little bit, but came home really strongly with the in the back part of the season for Norwood. And so that's got him right sort of into calculation. So I guess the question is, if he's really, really, high up in our calculations, the question is, do we reach from at 4, or are we looking at maybe splitting that pick 4 and getting a couple of picks, sort of, I don't know, 8, 9.
You're on the money
because, and grab him.
I reckon you're on the money because the Giants apparently have offered us pick 6 and their first round pick next year for pick 4. And the purpose in doing that, of course, is they will then take a good player other than Green, and then they can then when it's their turn at 4, then they can use scraps then for Green, because you have to, if somebody nominates Green earlier, which we will, or maybe Melbourne might, they have to use their next available pick, which would be their pick 6. But they're trying to
want to get ahead of us because we'll nominate.
Yeah, that's right. So that's one of the reasons why they've offered it. Now, we would actually be doing them a favour and letting them get 2 good players, Green and another. But also, do we worry about that, or do we worry about our own skins? Because that way we could then just more justify using pick 6 if we're going to pick the young lad up from South Australia, because but he's not really a pick 4, I don't think. I don't know whether you think he's a pick 4.
No, it's not. But we've said this a little bit now that the pick order is a little bit less relevant than usual because of the spread of talent and the evenness of talent. I just need to interrupt to do something I forgot to do at the beginning of the show, and that's to thank our sponsors. Smith Partners Real Estate really hitting the ground running this spring. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, or you have an investment property you'd like someone to manage on your behalf, call Ryan and the team at Smith Partners Real Estate up there at Golden Grove. They will look after your property as if it was their own, Peter. Down to earth electrical for all your electrical data and air conditioning needs. And of course, we give a shout out to Tim at Hardware Unboxed every week for all his good work. Lots going on in the tech world at the moment. A new NVIDIA graphics card release that has set the cat amongst the pigeons for those who give a shit about tech. And last but not least, of course, our wonderful patrons on Patreon. We really value everyone's support on Patreon. If you'd like to join them, patreon.com/AFL CrowCast, or click the Patreon button at aflcrowcast.com, which is, of course, our website where you'll see all the consolidated AFL and Adelaide Football Club news. Continue.
That was very good, Fane.
Thanks.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I think that we should do the trade with GWS. We may yet do that because we've got tons of time to do it, and we can even do it on the night if that's the case. Because that way we'd get pick 6 and still get the same player that we were after if we're going to take Stevens. And then we get their first round just as a bonus for next year. So we should be made that even on trade further for something else. So the other point, if you don't take Stevens at that, say we stay at pick 4, well, the obvious looking one to me, if we don't go Stevens, is Flanders. And I don't know what you guys think of Flanders.
I'm not sold on Flanders. I'm not sure whether he's got a bit of Ollie Wines about him, in my opinion. A bit
a little bit more flamboyant than him.
Yeah, no, I mean in terms of upside, probably. I don't know whether he's got a lot of upside.
You're thinking man-child type thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's my personal view.
Well, the other interesting ones apart from that from South Australia, Gould. And we won't probably be in a position to get Gould unless he drifts, and he may drift because he's biggish and he's not all that fast. He didn't have a great camp when they were doing the testing over there, but they reckon he's a Hearn-like player, and they think he'll probably turn out to be like Hearn. And if he turns out to be any good and think like that, you'd have to think that's a very good player.
I don't know about you, Peter. I've gone a bit cool on Gould as well. I think he's got some good attributes, but I don't know whether he's an AFL player.
I certainly don't think he's a top 15 pick. I think he'll drift out a little bit. I think there's a couple of things. I think there's just a couple of things that are going to hurt him. If I can line these up, I think that he had a great final series. So he was talk of the town, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
And they go top, they win a flag, and then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, he has just completely and utterly bombed at the combine. Really badly bombed.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that might tell you about what's going on between his ears. If you're a recruiter, you'd be thinking, this guy had leadership potential. He had, all this great stuff, and then he's obviously just completely let himself go in that. What was it? 3 weeks?
Yeah,
2 to 4 weeks, something like that, between the grand final and the draft. Well, I mean, what was he doing? I mean, he was on the, I think it's pretty obvious what he was doing. He was, and that's hard on on a kid, I know. But I just think that just maybe I honestly think the combine will hurt him, and I think that there's no way in the world he'll go. I honestly don't think now he'll certainly go any better than maybe 20s.
If he goes in 20s, we've got pick 23. Would you use him? Would you pick him up at pick 23?
I want to clear up what happened those couple of weeks. That's for sure.
Well, interesting, Pete, in the chat, Vardy Magic saying that he's actually lost, apparently, 5 kilos since the SNFL Grand Final, didn't go away on their trip. But I'm with you. Those results at the Combine were not promising at all. And if that's the 5 kilos that he's lost, what was he at the SNFL?
So was he tanking at the Combine?
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm wondering.
Well, I guess that's possible, isn't it?
I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't take him with our first pick in the 20s. I'd probably take him with our second or third, maybe.
Yeah, I probably would take him. I think he's tanked at the Combine. That's what I think. trying to stay home anyhow. That's just my thought.
Look, that could well be the case. That could well be the case, guys. He could have tanked the Combine. Who knows? But I think that he played some outstanding football in the finals, and everyone compares him to Shannon Hearn at West Coast. I think that's a pretty good comparison. A couple of the people I've seen have compared him to Jerry McGovern, in the sense that he's just not that athlete sort of type, but just knows how to play football.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll go. Obviously, he'll be picked up, but I think it'll be a little bit later than what people think.
The other one I find absolutely fascinating is Keziah Pickett.
Yes, I was going to mention him.
Now we must get him. It's a question of where, how I think he's the new Eddie for us, in my opinion. He's the guy that can be another Eddie for us in the forward lines, and he's got some tricks. I looked at his highlights; he really has got some tricks, and his contemporaries say that we haven't even seen it all yet. So where do you think you would hold out to? Bear in mind, we've got 23, and I think it's at 28, and then 37, and then we go in the early 40s and then late 40s. So which one do you think you take him at, or try and get him at?
I think he's late. I mean, he's definitely a later pick. I mean, he projects really as nothing more than a small forward, and that's fine. But you compare him to a kid like Ned McHenry, who was running 40 kilometres a day just for fun before he was drafted, and he you can get set now that he will be an out and out midfielder, Ned McHenry, even though he presented at the draft as a small forward, and he'll probably drift forward and play some football there. But he has got a ready to go AFL tank, and he's got all the attributes you need to be a good midfielder at AFL level. Pickett, on the other hand, is your classic. He's a lot of work. He's a work in progress, apparently. So
I wouldn't mind betting he'll go in the rookie draft.
Yeah, he may well go. He may well drift out to the rookie draft. Ben, you could well be right. It'll be.
If you look at our list profile, the one thing we've got a shitload of is forwards.
Yeah.
There are two, surprisingly, and I've only worked this out since I've been looking at our list recently. The area apart from ruck, obviously, the area of our ground which we have the least listed players is the midfield, following the post-season exit.
Absolutely correct. Yeah,
we've got more defenders than midfielders or forwards. More forwards than midfielders. So we're going to have to, despite the fact that we do need probably one more key tool, I believe.
We do down the back.
Down back, irrespective of, I still think there's a sniff that Elliot Himmelberg might end up down there.
We still need another one.
But I think we do, yeah. Geordie Butts is a great prospect, but he's still very raw, very young and very light. Needs another 10 kegs on that rig. We got plenty of small forwards. We've got enough key forwards, albeit, a lot of inexperience, but in terms of bums on seats. But where we're lacking is in the midfield. It's actually quite frightening. If you take Riley Knight out of the equation, who isn't really, in my opinion, a genuine midfielder, then and Patrick Wilson, who isn't probably a genuine AFL first 22, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 midfielders to choose from.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. Rory Sloane, Paul Seedsman, Chase Jones, Bryce Gibbs, Matty Crouch, Brad Crouch, Rory Atkins. You could probably chuck Smithers in there instead of across half back. But that's it. That's it.
Got Gallucci and Paholke.
Paholke, Gallucci, and McHenry.
Yeah, well, maybe. McHenry's included in that list. Gooch,
sorry, I didn't realise.
Yeah, Gooch and Paholke aren't. You'd probably make a case for Gooch. I was a big G for Paholke before we drafted him, but he's disappointed me. I just think he's a bit of a tweener and not quite there. And I do hope he gets a chance to prove one way or the other this year. But so in any way, there's a dearth of midfield talent is what I'm getting at. And
Gibbs, is Gibbs in there?
Yeah, Gibbs is in there.
Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we need to stack up on midfielders, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons why I'd be happy to let Gould drift and maybe pick him up late second, early third, rather than waste any picks on him. And I'd be smashing midfielders, to be honest.
What do you think of Dylan Stevens' fame?
I haven't seen enough. I like you. I've only seen his highlights, and they're always a bit skewed, aren't they? He does look a likely player. He does from his highlights, but I haven't seen enough to make a call. He did play well through that final series too, didn't he?
He did. No, he did.
He played well in their reserves grand final win.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
As well.
So I don't know. I don't know enough about him, Peter. You and Nick probably the SNFL gurus.
Yeah,
for our team, I haven't really. I'm only on the team.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing. So I'm going to say, Nicky, the interesting thing about this particular draft, though, you get past a certain point, and then there's a little bit of a raffle. They say that it's very, very even in terms of about 20 players. So
a certain point, as in pick 4, you mean?
yeah, exactly. Pick 4.
Not quite. I don't think it's really quite that early. I think you could probably sneak out to 6 or 7.
Well, you've got Rao, Anderson, and Green, and that's it. From everything that I read.
They give a big write up to that Hayden Young, who's comes off the half back line and and he has got a beautiful left foot kick and he's got pace, so he will go early. Sarong, who's a midfielder, but he's not probably the type of midfielder we've got because he's an inside mid, but he's a very good player too. But I think that he's not probably. We've got inside mids. We just need. And that's where Stevens does fit. He can play very well as an outside mid, and he's got a beautiful kick as well. So there are others. Flanders. There's a guy called Lockie Ash who's a defender.
None of them have really pushed their claims, though, have they? I mean, it's been a very static draft class, if you ask me. There's a few bolters at the back end of the draft, like we were saying before about Pickett, but it's been quite static throughout the entire 12 months, hasn't it? There's not been much emerging talent, and usually you get a bit of emerging talent during the year.
Well, basically, there's the ones I went through there. That's about it. They're the ones that we all talked about the top 5 or 6, and after that, it's a bit of a raffle after that.
Faye, what do you and Nicky, what do you think about the GWS pick swap offer?
Whether we should split?
What do you think of the offer? 6 and the 2021st.
Well, because you would want to. You would want to pick. You want 2 first rounders for 4th, and you would anticipate that it would be one in under 10, so 6 is quite a nice one, and that second one is likely to be in the latter half of the first round, so it's in the teens. To me, that's kind of what you would consider a fair swap. If we're still able to get the player that we want and it gives us another first rounder for next year, which, by the sounds of it, with our academy players, etc., we've got a couple of them that are possibly might be first rounders, and even a possibly a father-son opportunity that's a first rounder. So we're going to need picks for next year, and the higher the better.
Yeah, 6 and 18 doesn't necessarily excite me. If GWS happen to take it out next year.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't excite me either. And I have to say that it just feels to me that what you're doing is you're effectively handing GWS pick 3 and 4.
You are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
And you're getting 6 and potentially 15, 16. It's a bit stinky, I reckon. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I've looked at all the various.
I'd want something else. I'd want there to be 3.
I think if you're going to
that's an opening offer.
I think if you're going to discount to next year, it has to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
If you're going to make us defer until next year, it has to be a top 10 pick. And they don't have one. So, look, I'm not unhappy with actually splitting pick 4. I'm not unhappy with that, but
no, it's okay.
But it's got to be the right deal. I don't think you do it for the sake of it. And even if it was 6 and 14, it's pick 4 we're talking about here. So I think pick 4 is worth 2 picks in the top 10, if you ask me.
Well, especially with the way that the cards fall in terms of what they stand to benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not just pick 4.
No.
Yeah, it's getting them 2 good players.
Yeah.
And we're still only getting 1 in that draft. So it's got to be some way that we're getting an advantage over them. We don't want to advantage one of our opponents so well.
I'd be annoyed if we went down that path.
Yeah. The trouble is that, to me, it really is such a diverse draft class this year, not only in terms of talent, but also in terms of the position of that talent. And there's not actually a lot of players in the top 20 that really stand out and say, pick me, in terms of what we need, which is young, classy midfielders. And so, do you just take your medicine and put your chips in the 2020 draft? I don't know. Maybe that's what they're doing. And Nikki mentioned we got a couple of academy players. We've got Luke Edwards potentially. There's a bit going on next year. So maybe we just throw the chips in this year. I don't know. And try and pick up some good mid-range talent to fill out the list.
The problem apart from GWS, and if you go through the draft picks that everybody's got, there are very few opportunities to get, you were saying, to get 2 first rounders for it, and at least one of them in the top 10. Freo have got 7 and 10, which is 2 good picks. I don't think they would give that up and pick 4. Well, you got, and after you go after that, you got Geelong got 14 and 17. Well, I don't think you want to go down that low.
No.
And Gold Coast, they won't part with 1 and 2. They've got 15, but that's too far out. You don't want to be going out to there. GWS and Searles have got 6 and 40, so that's no good. Hawthorn have got 11 and 30. Melbourne got 3 and 8, but they'll hang on to those 2. And I can't really see who else there is to trade with in terms of.
Let's not forget, Macca, that live trading occurs, and there's every chance that we've told, and swapping of picks can occur all the way up to the draft, so that can happen at any stage. And we're within our rights, and we may have already told GWS, no, you're going to have to do better than that 2020 first rounder. And they might already be trying to find a better pick to go with pick 6. So you're right. They're really the only club that have got any sort of leverage with us whatsoever. And I think the onus would be on them to try and enhance that second pick in order for it to be worth our while. And
I think that's going to be difficult for them to do. But, sometimes they go through a whole series of swaps backwards and forwards here, and you can sometimes pick up a first round pick with somebody who's going to take father, sons, and academy players, etc. And they don't want to use their first round pick, so you give them a whole series of picks later, etc. for points. More points.
Well, don't forget it's next year's pick that they're trying to better. So I
understand that.
I'm not probably up with the next year's draft or indicative draft order at this stage to really know who might be the players involved in that, but they need to get that pick inside the top 10 or 12, I would say. Well,
it'd be good if they could, and that's why it'd be interesting to see what happens. And certainly on the surface of it, I can't see anything outside the Giants' offer. And it's a question of whether you take that or you say, well, you've got to make that better somehow, sweeter, and whether they can do that. Or whether we just stick with what we've got. So we just have to wait and see. But then, I think that that falls into Justin Reed's area. But of course, it'd be very nice to have a football director who he's talking to about it as well.
Yeah, but we don't need a footy ops manager. It's probably, don't want to labour this point, but it probably tells you all you need to know about what Brett Burton actually did with the fact that we can apparently operate into a very important draft without him, without a footy ops manager. So he obviously didn't get involved.
According to Fagan, we're pretty well teed up till December.
Yeah, so Bird mustn't have done much. Adelaide Giants maybe or something.
I don't think he did.
No. But so anyway, Peter, that was a long-winded answer to your question. What are your thoughts there on that?
No, I don't like it at all. I don't like the GWS offer at all. They would have to do much better than that because, as I say, they the reality of how it plays out for them is that they can get to good players, and so excuse me, we need to do much better than that. I'll be very, very annoyed indeed if we went down that path.
Yeah. How do you feel about chucking the chips in and going all in 2020?
No, it doesn't. I'm not excited about that either thing. I'd like to get a couple of. I'd like to somehow turn 4 into 2 decent picks. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'd like to go with something in the single digits, something in around about sort of 15, 16.
Yeah,
and then our 2 seconds as well. So, or even if maybe maybe those 2 seconds are bundled up into a first as well, so we end up with 3 firsts. Do you know what I mean?
That one. So, yeah, I don't think that'll happen.
But it probably won't happen. But I think there's enough good talent in this draft, and I think that we're in a situation where we need to be replenishing as soon as possible. And I don't like the idea of putting off picks that we could be using this year, putting it off for another year, which we did last year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could have had we had 3 good picks in a strong draft, and we 3-1. We threw the chips in there. So here we are again. So I don't want that then. I look at pick 4 and say, well, that's actually pick whatever it was from last year, 18 or something like that.
Yeah. And
so I don't want that cashed in again. For held over for 2 years basically.
Yeah.
So that's just me. I want to have a good crack at this draft, and I want to get 3 or 4 really good quality players.
Well, really, then you're talking about 3 midfielders. You're talking about Sarong, Dylan Stevens, and Sam Flanders. Probably are your 3 prospects.
Yeah.
But you have to have the picks to get those, because they're all going to be.
Well, we've got 4, so at the moment we can get any of those. Right?
Yes, we can. We get 1.
So you split them, you might get
more than 1.
You split them, you might get 2. I think if you split them for 2 first rounders this year, you'll get probably Stevens and Flanders would probably be the 2. I'm not 100% on Sarong. I think he's a good player, but we've got enough short midfielders.
We do.
We need another 1 or 2 mid. Like we've lost a lot of height and strength in our midfield with Camillus Yeoman and Huey Greenwood going. We need tall, big-bodied midfielders at the moment. So that's why I would probably pass on Sarong. Not that the other 2 are man mountains, but I think Flanders is over 180, and I'm pretty sure Stevens is over 180, isn't he?
Yeah.
And
He's
we-
184.
Yeah.
Stevens.
And
Yeah.
we still need speed. We need outside speed. That's
Oh, yeah, sorry, Nick. That's one that we
majorly
should have
lacking.
been saying that all along. We need speed, and more speed.
Yeah. So it's like, make no mistake, our list is in a bit of strife. When you actually have a look at what we've been left with, it is in a bit of strife. I mean, I pray to the football gods that Jordan Gallucci comes on the way I feel that he should.
Yes.
Same.
Because I think if he reaches his potential, the Gooch, I think, is a better version of Richard Douglas.
Agree.
Faster, harder, and better disposal. So I pray to God that he comes on. The only other bloke that I can see coming on really in that role is more time for Smithers. Almost a permanent midfield role, whether it be inside or on a wing.
One chap you didn't mention, Fiend, and maybe you had him more in mind for half back, is Millerer.
I'm not sold in the middle with Millerer, Mac. I really aren't.
We really actually took him on to be in that role to give us that pace out of the middle, didn't we?
Yeah. But I think I actually really, really like him off half-back, and half-back is a key line these days. So I don't think we're losing a huge amount by not having Miller in the midfield rotations. And I think if we're going to push Smith into the midfield, Miller is the obvious to take over that distribution role out of defence.
That makes sense. That does make sense, yep.
And he just looked lost. He just looked absolutely lost in the midfield.
Yeah, I just think he needs the ball coming at him.
Yep, agree.
It releases Smith into a more attacking,
which has always been his whole career goal has been to get into the mids.
Yeah, but at this stage of his career, look, he might take another step. I don't know, but from what I've seen at the moment, he's better off halfback. So, there's a bit of pressure on Hamish this year in a thin draft to get some good picks into the club. No huge standouts, so we might have a look at a little bit more at some individuals next week. We've got 2 casts before the draft, I think. So we might look more heavily at some individuals over the next couple of weeks. But it really, it's a crapshoot, to be honest.
Ogilvy, he and his boys have been working all year. I'll back him to come up with a couple of good players, and whether we use 5 picks, whether we use 6 picks, and there's still that thing hasn't been solved yet. I still think we might be going to split, or we may be going to roll 2 into 1 or something like that. I don't know what we're going to do, but there is a question of are they going to go with 28 or 29 players. Well, another interesting. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say probably the most organised section of our club, in my opinion, is our football recruiting department.
That part is good. Yeah.
We seem to be on the ball there, and maybe even a little bit ahead of the curve in some respects. So let's hope they can pull it out.
I've got what I've got to bloody say now.
You're talking about how many we're going to take into the season, 38 or 40.
Yeah, whether that reminds me, the fact that of the delisted players, is there any of the delisted players that interest you at all?
No. No, maybe Partington, that's all.
Sorry?
Maybe Partington, but no, not really.
Okay, well, I thought Partington would certainly be worth a rookie, being a rookie at least. What about the guy from Collingwood, the drug boy that got?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Why?
Not good enough.
Yeah, he's.
Oh no! He was a very good player. He was only in his first year court. He only played about 12, 13 games, and he got a rising star nom, and he was averaging. He's a very dashing, fast defender.
Yeah, that's why Collingwood delisted him.
Yeah.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why they did.
probably more as in the individual he was. He's saying he's a reformed character now, etc.
Yeah,
and there's apparently about five or six clubs chasing him anyhow.
No one would know better than Collingwood how his character is, and the fact that in spite of his talent, they chose to delist him gives you pretty much everything you need to know, as far as I'm concerned. Not that I want pretty boys at the Adelaide Footy Club, but they've got to be able to keep their nose clean and stay on the park.
And then there's the other guy that Brisbane delisted. He was a very good tagger. Got his bloody name
Robinson.
now. Yeah, no. Robertson, isn't it? No. Robinson? No, Robertson.
No.
Robertson.
We're trying. You know what? I mean, I understand. Teams that are sort of pushing up the ladder that need to sort of plug holes, and they look at this kind of guy. We're trying to rebuild our list.
We don't need that.
I don't want recycled players on our list. I really don't. I don't even like really picking up Frampton, but I know that I'll get shouted down on that one. But I just don't like at the moment when you're trying to rebuild a list. You're trying to re-energise the list, getting recycled players. But anyway, that's just my view.
Yeah, the only thing I'll give on Frampton is that he's at the right age, like he's at the front end of his career, not the back end.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I'll say. But I'm with you. Apart from that, Peter, I don't want recycled players. I think we have to start from the ground up. And why would you pick up a bloke to take the place of a kid? I'd rather play a kid. Look, I think we're going to.
You are what your record says you are.
Yes, I agree. Look, I think we're going to wind it up there because the only other thing that I'll mention is I suppose it's retirement of Paddy McCartan. I mean, we've talked about Paddy McCartan a bit during the season, and he called time indefinitely, and to read about some of the things that poor kid's had to go through that don't always come to light until after the event. All you do is hope that kid can get back to some sort of normal life.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever will, though, from a football point of view, because some of the knocks that he's had he's been getting progressively worse with his concussion, and some of those knocks that he got really reacted very badly to were only very minor knocks, and I don't think he can afford to play football anymore because. He's got the rest of his life ahead of him, and he's having trouble now.
Yeah. It seems to be cumulative, and they did point to one particular one early last season that he had a lot of trouble with, and to read about what his day-to-day life looks like at the moment for a young kid, it's just not worth it. So, pardon me.
I wish him all the best, but I also wish him he doesn't come back either.
Well, I do too. I do too.
And Fiend, we've had a discussion on this before where we both actually thought that there's possibly something to it that his diabetes exacerbates
maybe
those concussions and the results. And we were talking at the time that for his health that he really does need to step away. So we do wish him all the best, and to take care of himself.
Yep, absolutely. Look, we have to thank our loyal listeners on Spreaker for soldiering on through what's been a very difficult cast. Trying to polish a turd this week.
No, it's not that bad.
But look, thanks to everyone who's joined us, not only on Spreaker, but also on Facebook and YouTube. We really do appreciate your ongoing listenership. Mention our sponsors again briefly: Smith Partners Real Estate up there at Golden Grove, Down to Earth Electrical, and of course Tim at Hardware Unboxed, along with all our wonderful patrons. Peter, Nikki, Macca.
Good evening.
Farewell, and thanks for all the fish.
See ya.
Not all.